He existed in the quiet hum between worlds. Arthur Pendelton, the night janitor, polishing the floors of power and ambition he never expected to touch. For 12 years, the Vance Innovations Tower was a domain only after darkness fell, a silent kingdom of gleaming surfaces and empty chairs. But one rainy Tuesday evening, that silence was shattered by the smallest of sounds, the child's heartbroken sob echoing in the marble lobby. That sound and the lost, furry friend it mourned, which set in motion a chain of events Arthur could never have predicted. It was a simple act of quiet care, born from a lonely heart recognizing another's distress, an act that would lead to an encounter with the building's powerful CEO, and an offer that promised to rewrite the entire story of his solitary life. Arthur Pendelton, at 58, wore his invisibility like a well-worn coat. Custodial technician first class, his badge read, but janitor felt truer to the reality of his night spent erasing the day's chaos within the sleek, imposing walls of Vance Innovations. He arrived punctually at 7 p.m., just as the last wave of daytime professionals hurried out, their clipped conversations and the rhythmic click of heels fading into the city's evening symphony. Arthur preferred the quiet handover, the brief nod to the evening security guard, Frank, before the building truly became his own. The anonymity wasn't just accepted. It was a balm. His work was a ritual, a meticulous meditation in motion. He found profound satisfaction in the transformation, the smudged glass doors becoming invisible panes reflecting the city lights, the scuffed marble floors regaining their mirror-like sheen under his buffer, the overflowing bins emptied, their contents whisked away like forgotten thoughts. He moved with impracticed, almost reverent gait through the deserted offices, each floor a silent testament to the day's deals, deadlines, and dramas. He'd see the remnants, a wilting corsage from an office celebration, a hastily scribbled motivational quote taped to a monitor, a pair of expensive-looking reading glasses left beside a keyboard. He was the archaeologist of the immediate past, cataloging these small signs of life before wiping the slate clean for the next day. He knew the building's nocturnal sounds intimately, the sigh of the HVAC system, the distant rumble of the elevators in their shafts, the specific creak of the floorboard outside Suite 18B. His own life echoed the quiet emptiness of the tower at midnight. His small apartment, nestled in a neighborhood far removed from the downtown core, was impeccably clean but sparsely furnished. No photographs adorned the walls, no mementos cluttered the surfaces. Only a single, thriving African violet sat on the windowsill, its persistent green leaves and occasional purple blooms a small splash of life against the beige walls. There had been a time, long ago, when the rooms held more noise, more clutter, more warmth. A wife's laughter, the scent of shared meals, the comfortable weight of another presence. But Emily had been gone for 15 years now, taken quickly by an illness that left Arthur adrift in a sea of silence. The loneliness wasn't a sharp pain anymore, but a dull, constant ache he'd learned to live with, a companion he rarely acknowledged but always felt beside him. His routines were simple, solitary. Supper eaten while standing at the kitchen counter, usually soup or toast. Evenings spent with library books, their pages worn smooth by countless other hands, mostly histories or biographies, escapes into other lives. Weekends sometimes involved a bus ride to the park, where he'd sit on a bench, watching families play, a wistful, fleeting smile touching his lips before he'd inevitably turn his gaze away, feeling the invisible wall between their world and his. He wasn't bitter, just resigned. He'd carved out a small, safe space of predictability. Kindness manifested in quiet ways, meticulously sorting his own recycling, leaving seeds out for sparrows on his balcony. The way he carefully righted an overturned trash bin on the sidewalk instead of just walking past. He moved gently, leaving minimal trace, asking for little in return. His interactions were minimal. A polite nod to his neighbors, a brief exchange with the librarian, the nightly check-in with Frank at the security desk. He expected little, and therefore was rarely disappointed. His contentment was a fragile thing, built on lowered expectations and the solace of routine. Usually by 8:30 p.m., the Vance Innovations Tower was sinking into its deep nocturnal slumber. The last stragglers gone, the security systems fully engaged. But tonight, the rhythm fell off. As Arthur maneuvered his heavy cleaning cart, its rubber wheels squeaking faintly on the polished floor, toward the grand main lobby, a sound pierced the usual quiet. Faint at first, then clearer, sharper. A child weeping, not a tired whimper, but the raw, ragged sound of genuine distress. It pulled at something deep inside him, a chord rarely struck. He rounded the massive granite pillar that partially obscured the main elevator bank and stopped. There, under the cool, recessed lighting, stood a woman he recognized by sight. Sleek blonde hair pulled back, expensive-looking charcoal suit, an aura of brisk efficiency usually clinging to her. Tonight, though, that efficiency was fractured. Her face was tight with stress, one hand gripping her smartphone tightly to her ear, the other trying futilely to comfort a small girl clinging desperately to her leg. The girl, maybe 5 or 6, wore bright pink rain boots that seemed incongruously cheerful against her tear-soaked face and shuddering shoulders. "No, Mark, that's not acceptable. The deadline is firm," the woman was saying into the phone, her voice low but intense. She broke off, glancing down. "Lily, honey, please. Mommy needs to fix this. Please stop crying." She attempted a gentle pry, but the girl only clung tighter, her face buried in the fabric of her mother's trousers. "Look, I have to call you back. I'm walking out now." She disconnected the call with a sharp tap, her sigh heavy with exhaustion. "Sweetie, we have to go," she said, her voice strained but softer now. "We're going to be late meeting Aunt Carol." "What's wrong?" "Tell Mommy." Between gulping sobs, Arthur could just make out the words. "Barnaby, Barnaby, he's gone. I want Barnaby." The mother knelt, briefly juggling her briefcase and a large leather tote bag that looked overstuffed. "Oh, honey, not Barnaby again. Are you sure he's not in your backpack? Did we leave him in the car?" She sounded distracted, her eyes flicking towards the elevator buttons, then back to her watch. "We don't have time to look right now. Pumpkin. I promise. Promise we will look as soon as we get to Aunt Carol's." He probably just fell under the seat again. But the promise fell hollow, stretched thin by the urgency pulling her elsewhere. The little girl, Lily, wasn't buying it. Her cries intensified, a keening wail of pure loss. "No, he was here. I had him when we came in. Barnaby." Arthur remained frozen behind the pillar, an unwilling witness to this small domestic drama playing out against a backdrop of corporate grandeur. He felt a pang of sharp empathy. He remembered, with sudden clarity, the gut-wrenching panic of losing Captain Blue, his own childhood plush rabbit, left behind on a park bench decades ago. The world had felt tilted, unsafe, until Captain Blue was miraculously recovered. He understood Lily's despair. He also saw the mother's struggle, the impossible balancing act of professional demands and parental duties etched onto her face. She wasn't uncaring, just drowning in overwhelm. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, its polished doors sliding open. The mother gently but firmly guided the sobbing Lily inside. "Come on, sweet pea. Deep breaths. We'll find him." The last thing Arthur heard before the door slid shut was Lily's desperate, fading cry, "Barnaby!" swallowed by the mechanics of the building. Then silence, a profound, echoing silence that felt heavier than usual. The lobby, moment before filled with raw emotion, now seemed vast and indifferent. Arthur stared at the closed elevator doors, the image of Lily's crumpled face vivid in his mind. Somewhere, Lost within these gleaming walls, or perhaps dropped outside on the rain-slicked pavement, was a treasured friend named Barnaby, and a little girl was heading into the night. Without her anchor, he sighed, the sound loud in the stillness. He reached for his mop. He had work to do, schedules to keep. It wasn't his place to get involved, but the echo of that cry, it lingered. Arthur tried to immerse himself in the familiar rhythm of his work, starting on the top floor and meticulously working his way down. He polished the brass fittings in the executive lounge until they gleamed like gold, vacuumed the plush carpets in the conference rooms, leaving perfect diagonal lines, wiped down the endless surfaces of glass and chrome. Usually, the repetitive task soothed him, cleared his mind. Tonight, his thoughts kept circling back to the lobby, to Lily and Barnaby. Every shadow seemed to hold the potential shape of a small, slumped bear. He found himself peering into wastebaskets with more care than usual, scanning under desks, his eyes snagging on crumpled balls of paper, discarded folders. He chided himself internally. Pendleton, get a grip. It's not your concern. The mother probably found the bear in her oversized tote bag, or maybe it really was in the car. The child was likely already comforted, distracted by Aunt Carol. He was a janitor, a ghost in the machine. His job was to clean, not to meddle in the small, personal tragedies of the building's daytime inhabitants. Getting involved felt like crossing an invisible line. Risking what? Reprimand? Ridicule? He wasn't sure, but the instinct to remain unnoticed was deeply ingrained. Yet the image persisted. Lily's face, awash in tears. The sheer panic in her voice. He understood that childhood bond, the way a stuffed animal could become an extension of oneself, a vessel for comfort and security. His own Captain Blue had absorbed countless tears, listened to whispered secrets, stood guard against nighttime monsters. Losing him, even temporarily, had felt like losing a part of himself. What if Barnaby wasn't just any teddy bear? What if he was special? By the time he reached the 10th floor, the internal argument had shifted. It wasn't about meddling anymore. It was about empathy, about the possibility of doing something small, something kind, that might make a real difference to someone, even a stranger. What if the bear was still here, overlooked in the chaos? Finding it wouldn't disrupt anything. It would be a quiet act, unseen perhaps, but potentially significant. It felt right, like aligning a misplaced chair or wiping away a stubborn smudge, bringing a small bit of order back to someone's world. He finished his designated tasks for the upper floors more quickly than usual, his movements efficient, but his mind elsewhere. When he finally descended to the main lobby again, close to midnight, the decision had solidified. He owed it to that little girl's tears, and perhaps to the lingering memory of Captain Blue, to at least look properly. He switched off the brighter overhead lights, leaving only the soft, indirect lighting that cast long shadows across the polished floor. The atmosphere shifted, becoming more intimate, less imposing. He parked his cart near the entrance, took a deep breath, and began his search in earnest. He started with the seating area near the elevators where he'd first seen them. He got down on his hands and knees, peering under the low, modern sofas, his flashlight beam cutting through the dimness. He lifted cushions, checked the deep crevices where coins or keys might disappear. Nothing but dust bunnies and a stray paperclip. He moved methodically around the lobby's perimeter, behind the tall, architectural planters holding stiff, artificial ferns, under the heavy glass side tables, along the baseboards. He checked the umbrella stand near the entrance, empty except for a single, forgotten black umbrella with a bent spoke. He ran his hand along the ledges of the decorative water feature, currently switched off for the night. Still nothing. His search led him to revolving doors. He pushed them slowly, checking each compartment, scanning the bristly welcome mats inside and out. He peered through the glass at the rain-streaked pavement beyond, wondering if Barnaby had been dropped out there, lost to the city night. A flicker of discouragement started to set in. This lobby was huge, cleaned meticulously every day. The chances of the small teddy bear remaining unnoticed seemed increasingly slim. Maybe the mother was right. Maybe this was a fool's errand. He felt a familiar surge of self-doubt. What was he doing? Creeping around in the dark like some kind of scavenger. He should just finish his floors and go home. He almost turned back to his cart, almost gave in to the ingrained habit of non-involvement. But then he thought about the mother's stress again. Juggling bags, phone, briefcase, distraught child. It would be easy to drop something, to have it knocked aside without noticing. Where else might they have paused, even briefly? His gaze fell upon a slightly recessed alcove near the service corridor entrance, partially hidden from the main lobby view. This was where the large recycling bins were kept overnight, awaiting pickup by the morning crew. Blue bins for paper, green for plastic and glass, gray for general waste. It was part of his job to ensure this area was tidy, wheeling the bins out to the loading dock before his shift ended. Tonight, he noticed something slightly amiss. A stack of discarded glossy magazines and newspapers wasn't in the paper bin, but piled somewhat messily beside it, as if knocked over or hastily dumped. He approached the alcove, intending to tidy the pile and deposit correctly. He bent down, gathering the slippery magazines. And then, beneath the topmost layer of newsprint, he saw it, a patch of soft, familiar brown, not paper, fur. His breath caught. Very carefully, almost holding his breath, he lifted the stack of papers away. And there he was, lying face down, slightly squashed but undeniably present. Barnaby, a classic teddy bear, maybe a foot tall, with warm brown fur, 2 dark button eyes, a stitched nose, and a slightly askew red ribbon tied in a bow around his neck. He looked undeniably well-loved. The fur on his ears and paws was slightly matted from handling. He was dusty from his ordeal among the discarded papers, and one floppy ear was bent at an odd angle, but he was whole. A slow smile spread across Arthur's face, lighting up his features in the dim alcove. Relief washed over him, warm and surprisingly potent. It was a small thing, finding a lost toy, insignificant in the grand scale of the Vance Innovations empire, but it felt like a major victory. He had found him. He hadn't given up. Gently, Arthur scooped Barnaby up, cradling him in his hands. He brushed off the worst of the dust with his fingers, his touch surprisingly tender. Looking into the bear's blank button eyes, he felt a connection, an understanding of the comfort this small object represented. He straightened the bent ear carefully. Now came the next part, ensuring Barnaby completed his journey home. Holding the found teddy bear, Arthur felt an unexpected weight of responsibility settle upon him in the quiet lobby. Barnaby felt solid, real, a tangible link to the little girl's distress. Simply leaving him on a counter seemed inadequate, impersonal. What if the morning rush swept him aside? What if he ended up in the generic lost and found bin in the security office, a place Arthur knew was rarely checked proactively? He pictured Lily arriving, hope maybe flickering in her eyes, only to find Barnaby still missing, lost again in the building's bureaucracy. No, that wouldn't do. He considered trying to locate the mother's office. Eleanor, Lily had called her? Or was it the mother calling someone Eleanor? He wasn't sure. He knew she used the executive elevators, implying a high floor, maybe even the top executive suite. But navigating those floors at night, searching for clues, felt like a serious overstep of his boundaries. He could picture the questions, the suspicion. It wasn't worth the risk to his job. He briefly thought about leaving a note for Frank, the night guard, asking him to keep an eye out for them. But Frank, while not unfriendly, was often engrossed in his novels and had already shown little recognition of the pair. Arthur needed a more certain method. The safest option, the one that felt most careful, was to take Barnaby home with him, just for the night, clean him up properly, ensure he wasn't displaced again, and figure out the best way to return him in the morning light. It felt slightly illicit, removing property from the premises, but his intention felt pure guardianship, not theft. It was about ensuring the reunion. He tucked Barnaby carefully inside his own canvas satchel, placing him gently between his thermos and his wrapped sandwich. The small, soft weight felt comforting against his side as he resumed his cleaning duties. For the remaining hours of his shift, the vast, empty building felt subtly different, less lonely. He moved through the floors with his usual diligence, but with a new undercurrent of purpose, a secret mission nestled in his bag. He imagined Lily's face lighting up when she saw her bear again. The thought warmed him more than the rhythmic motion of his buffer. The first hint of gray was softening the edges of the night sky as Arthur let himself into his quiet apartment. He carefully lifted Barnaby from a bag and placed him on the small kitchen table under the single overhead light. Seeing him there, out of the context of the gleaming corporate tower, made him seem even more like a cherished companion. Arthur filled a small basin with lukewarm water and found a soft, clean cloth. Gently, methodically, he began to wipe away the grime and dust from Barnaby's fur, taking care around the button eyes and the stitched nose. He worked with a quiet focus, the same attention to detail he applied to polishing brass fixtures. As he cleaned the bear's left arm, he noticed it, the small, loose seam he'd vaguely registered earlier. Several stitches had come undone, and the stuffing was threatening to peek through. If snagged, the whole seam could unravel. Without hesitation, Arthur went to the back of his closet and retrieved a small, old-fashioned sewing tin, its painted lid slightly rusted. It had belonged to Emily. He'd kept it for mending his work shirts, but hadn't opened it in years. His fingers, more accustomed to the handle of a mop or the trigger of a spray bottle, felt thick and clumsy as he threaded a needle with sturdy brown thread that closely matched Barnaby's fur. But he worked slowly, patiently, pushing the needle through the worn fabric, pulling the stitches taut, closing the small gap with surprising neatness. It wasn't professional tailoring, but it was secure. He snipped the thread, smoothed the fur over repair, and felt a quiet surge of satisfaction. Fixing something broken, even something small, felt good. He straightened Barnaby's slightly crumpled red ribbon, fluffed up his fur as best he could, and then carried him into the small living area. He placed Barnaby carefully in the center of the armchair opposite his own usual reading chair. The bear sat there, looking slightly solemn but expectant, adding an unexpected focal point to the room. Arthur ate his simple breakfast, the silence of the apartment feeling less stark, punctuated by the presence of his small, furry guest. He found himself glancing over, catching the bear's eye, a faint smile playing on his lips. He felt like a temporary guardian, entrusted with something precious. Returning to Vance Innovations, the following evening felt different. Barnaby, clean, mended, and wrapped carefully in a fresh tea towel, was tucked securely back in Arthur's satchel. A flutter of nervous anticipation resided in Arthur's chest. How would this play out? Would he find the right person? Would his efforts be understood or misconstrued? He pushed the anxiety down, focusing on the goal, reuniting bear and child. He started his shift with a heightened awareness of the lobby traffic. He polished the already gleaming brass door handles near the entrance with extra deliberation, his eyes scanning the faces of those entering and leaving. He saw executives rushing out, administrative staff chatting as they headed home, delivery drivers making quick drop-offs, but no sign of the blonde woman and the little girl with the pink boots. As the evening wore on and the building emptied, his hope of a chance encounter dwindled. He approached Frank at the security desk again, trying a different angle. "Frank," he said casually, leaning against the counter for a moment. Do you happen to know which department a senior executive works in? Blonde lady. Often has a little girl with her late in the day. Frank glanced up from his crossword puzzle, frowning slightly. Blonde lady? CO maybe? Ms. Vance? Top floor. He shrugged. Lots of EPs too, though. Hard to keep track. Why? Oh, no reason, Arthur said quickly, backing away. Just curious. Saw her rushing out yesterday. He didn't want to involve Frank further or raise suspicion. CO, Ms. Vance. The name clicked, the name on the building itself. Knowing her identity somehow made direct contact feel even more daunting. His shift progressed. Midnight came and went. The building settled into its deepest quiet. Arthur knew he couldn't keep Barnaby indefinitely. He needed to orchestrate the handover before morning. Leaving him in the lost and found bin still felt wrong. Then an idea formed. A simple, direct approach that relied on visibility and trust. Near the end of his shift, in the quiet hour just before dawn, Arthur retrieved Barnaby from his bag one last time. He unwrapped him carefully. He took a fresh sheet of paper from the small notepad he carried for jotting down supply needs and, using his clearest, neatest handwriting, wrote a simple, anonymous message. Found this little fellow looking a bit lost near the recycling area last night. He seems eager to get home. Hope he finds his way soon. He hesitated over signing it, then decided against it. The act wasn't about him. He walked purposefully to the center of the vast, polished granite reception desk. It was a focal point of the lobby, the first thing anyone entering would see clearly, with a sense of quiet ceremony. He sat Barnaby upright on the cool stone surface, facing the main entrance doors. The little bear looked small but resolute against the imposing backdrop. Arthur carefully propped a folded note against Barnaby's leg, ensuring it was visible but wouldn't easily blow away. There, visible, safe, waiting. Surely, whoever was looking for him couldn't miss him now. He stood back for a moment, observing the small tableau. Barnaby, the silent sentinel, waiting under the soft glow of the security lights. Arthur felt a sense of completion, of having done all he could. With a final, hopeful glance, he gathered his own belongings, clocked out, and walked out into the cool, pre-dawn air, the city still hushed and expectant. He didn't know if his small intervention would succeed, but he carried with him a quiet flicker of hope, a stark contrast to the usual weary solitude of his journey home. The following evening, Arthur arrived at Vance Innovations with a knot of nervous curiosity in his stomach. Had Barnaby found his way? Was Lily happy? Or had his gesture gone unnoticed? The bear relegated to a dusty bin? He tried to push the thoughts aside as he prepared for his shift, focusing on the familiar routine. But before he could even collect his cart, Mr. Henderson, his immediate supervisor, a man of few words and fewer smiles, intercepted him near the time clock. Pendleton, Henderson said, his tone flat, impossible to read. Got a minute? Building manager wants a word. Arthur's blood ran cold. This was it. He'd crossed a line. Taking the bear, leaving it on the desk, maybe messing with the recycling area. He'd broken some obscure rule. Visions of a formal warning or worse, dismissal, flashed through his mind. 12 years of steady, if solitary, employment dissolving because of a teddy bear. His hands felt clammy as he nodded mutely. Yes, Mr. Henderson. He followed Henderson's brisk pace down the brightly lit corridor towards the management offices, his sturdy work boots suddenly feeling clumsy and loud on the tile floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. He braced himself, trying to appear calm, composed, ready to apologize profusely. Henderson tapped lightly on a door marked Building Manager D. Sterling, and pushed it open without waiting for a reply. Mr. Sterling Pendleton's here. He stepped aside, gesturing for Arthur to enter. Arthur took a hesitant step inside, his eyes blinking against the brighter office lights. David Sterling, The building manager, a man Arthur usually only saw from a distance during inspections, sat behind a large, organized desk. He looked up, his expression neutral. But it wasn't Mr. Sterling who commanded Arthur's immediate attention. Standing near the wide window, looking out briefly before turning towards him, was the woman from the lobby, Lily's mother, Miss Vance, the CEO. But the stressed, almost harried energy Arthur remembered was gone. She stood tall and composed, her tailored dress immaculate, her blonde hair styled perfectly, and she was smiling. Not a polite corporate smile, but a genuine, warm expression that reached her clear blue eyes, instantly dissolving the tension Arthur had carried into the room. "Mr. Pendleton," she said, her voice carrying a warmth and clarity that surprised him. It lacked the strained edge he'd overheard on the phone. "Thank you for coming in. Please." She gestured toward him, then extended a perfectly manicured hand. "I'm Eleanor Vance." Arthur felt rooted to the spot for a second before stepping forward and taking her offered hand. Her grip was firm, confident, yet welcoming. "Miss Vance," he managed, his voice barely a croak. Vance, the name on the towering building he meticulously cleaned each night. He felt a dizzying sense of unreality, acutely aware of his simple work clothes, the faint scent of cleaning solution that probably clung to him. "Eleanor, please," she insisted gently. She glanced at the building manager. "David, thank you. Could you give us a few minutes alone?" "Absolutely, Ms. Vance," Sterling replied quickly, rising and discreetly exiting the office, closing the door softly behind him. The quiet click of the latch seemed unnaturally loud. Arthur stood awkwardly in the sudden silence, alone with the CEO. Eleanor gestured towards one of the plush visitor chairs facing the desk. "Please, Arthur, sit down. May I call you Arthur?" He nodded, perching stiffly on the very edge of the comfortable leather. It felt strange to be sitting in this office, a space he normally only entered after hours to empty the trash and wipe down surfaces. Eleanor didn't sit behind the desk, establishing distance. Instead, she leaned casually against its edge, fostering a sense of unexpected intimacy. "Arthur," she began, her gaze direct and kind, "I wanted to express my gratitude personally. When my daughter Lily and I arrived this morning, we came through the main lobby, and the very first thing Lily saw, sitting right there in the middle of the reception desk, was Barnaby." A soft smile touched her lips. She screamed. Not a cry, but a shriek of pure joy, ran straight to him, nearly knocking him off the desk in her excitement. She paused, the emotion in her voice palpable. "You truly have no idea, Arthur. Lily was utterly devastated Tuesday night. Barnaby isn't just a toy for her. He was a gift from her father, my late husband." Her voice dipped almost imperceptibly on late, a fleeting shadow crossing her eyes before she continued. "He's the one thing she has left that feels truly connected to him. He's everything to her." Arthur felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't known. He'd sensed the bear was important, but not that important. "The receptionist found your note," Eleanor went on, holding up the small, neatly folded piece of paper Arthur recognized as his own. "She knew I'd been asking security about a lost bear and sent it up to my office immediately. It was incredibly thoughtful, just placing him there where she couldn't possibly miss him." She looked at him intently. "Of course the note wasn't signed, but I was determined to find out who our quiet benefactor was. I asked security to review the overnight camera feeds. They showed me the footage. You finding him tucked away by the recycling bins. It must have taken you quite some time to locate him." Arthur shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't much trouble, ma'am." "Eleanor." Her smile deepened slightly. "They also showed me the earlier footage, Arthur, when you put him carefully in your bag and brought him back this evening. She held his gaze, and Arthur felt himself flush, anticipating a reprimand for taking him off-site. And then Eleanor added, her voice softening, "When Lily finally calmed down enough to let me hold Barnaby for a moment this morning, I noticed something else. A small, very neat repair on his arm, right where the seam had started fray." She tilted her head slightly, her blue eyes searching his face. "That was you too, wasn't it, Arthur? You took the time to mend him?" He could only nod, dropping his gaze to his own hands, clasped tightly in his lap. They suddenly felt rough and clumsy. "The thread was loose," he mumbled, feeling strangely vulnerable. Didn't want him coming apart. "It was such an extraordinary act of kindness," Eleanor said softly, pushing herself off the desk and taking a step closer. She wasn't imposing, but her presence filled the room. Finding him was one thing, but taking him home, cleaning him, mending him, you treated him with such dignity, such care, as if he genuinely mattered. Arthur looked up, meeting her gaze. He saw no condescension, only sincere appreciation. He felt seen, not just as a janitor, the uniform, but as a person who had made a choice, performed an action that had resonated deeply. "Arthur," Eleanor continued, her tone shifting, becoming more thoughtful, "I've worked late here many nights over the past few years. I've seen you. I recognize you instantly from the security footage. I've always been peripherally aware of how spotless everything is when I arrive in the morning, how meticulous your work is. The attention to detail is remarkable." She paused, leaning against the desk again. "But I confess, I never truly saw you. I saw the results of your work, the function you performed for this building, but I didn't see the person. Finding Barnaby, and more importantly, the way you cared for him and returned him, changed that completely. It revealed a depth of character, integrity, empathy, initiative, meticulousness that goes far beyond simply doing a job well." She took a breath, looking reflective. "Life has been challenging," she admitted, her professional mask slipping slightly, revealing a glimpse of the woman beneath. "Since losing my husband 2 years ago, this company is demanding, and raising Lily alone often feels like navigating a storm. Tuesday evening was particularly awful. A potential crisis brewing with our European launch, supplier issues, immense pressure. I wasn't my best self with Lily. I was short-tempered, distracted. Seeing her so heartbroken over Barnaby just added another layer of stress and guilt." She met Arthur's eyes again, her expression earnest. "Your quiet actions, they were like a moment of unexpected grace in all that chaos. It wasn't just about getting a teddy bear back. It was a powerful reminder that decency and genuine kindness exist, often quietly, in the background, performed without expectation of reward. It centered me, actually." Arthur listened, speechless. He had never imagined his small act having such profound ripple effect, let alone hearing the CEO of this massive corporation speak so candidly about her own struggles. A fragile bridge of shared humanity seemed to span the immense gap between their positions. Eleanor straightened up, her demeanor becoming more focused, though the warmth remained. "Arthur, character is a bedrock of everything I value, both personally and professionally. Reliability, integrity, empathy, attention to detail. These aren't just soft skills. They are fundamental strengths. Vance Innovations thrives on complex systems, yes, but more importantly, it thrives on trustworthy, dedicated people who take pride in what they do and care about the outcome." She looked at him directly, a new intensity in her eyes. "I spent a good part today thinking about this. About you, about the consistent quality of your work over the years, combined with the extraordinary care you showed in this situation. It speaks volumes." She paused, letting her words hang in the air for a moment. "Arthur, we currently have an opening on our facilities management team. It's a crucial role, coordinating directly with maintenance contractors, managing supply logistics for the entire building, overseeing preventative maintenance schedules, ensuring the operational backbone of this tower runs seamlessly. It requires exceptional organizational skills, foresight, absolute reliability, and meticulous attention to detail. Arthur's heart began to pound. He stared at her, barely daring to breathe, unsure where this was leading. "It's a salary position, Arthur," Eleanor stated clearly. "Regular daytime hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Full benefits package, comprehensive health insurance, dental, vision, paid vacation, and sick leave, a 401k plan. And it goes without saying a substantial increase in salary compared to your current role." She smiled a hopeful, encouraging expression. "I believe you possess exactly the qualities needed for this position. Your demonstrated diligence, your initiative, your inherent trustworthiness, your eye for detail that I've now seen extends far beyond polished floors. I think you would be a tremendous asset to our core operations team. I would like to offer you the job, Arthur." The words hit Arthur with the force of a physical blow, stealing his breath. A job, a real job inside the company. Daytime, benefits, respect. It was unthinkable. A possibility so far removed from his quiet, circumscribed life that he hadn't even allowed himself to dream of it. Years of solitary nights, of feeling invisible, of quiet resignation. It all seemed to shatter in that instant. A dam of long-suppressed emotion broke within him. He felt a prickling heat behind his eyes, a tightness in his throat. To his profound surprise and slight embarrassment, tears welled up, blurring the image of the poised soul standing before him, offering him not just employment, but a future, a different life. He tried to speak, to form a coherent response, but only a choked sob escaped. He swallowed hard, blinking rapidly, trying to clear his vision. The tears spilled over, tracing warm paths down his weathered cheeks. "Miss Vance!" "Eleanor," he started, his voice thick, trembling. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything elaborate, Arthur," Eleanor said softly, her voice filled with understanding. There was no pity in her gaze, only kindness and quiet conviction. "Just perhaps say yes?" He looked up at her then, through his tears, meeting her steady, encouraging gaze. The weight of years of loneliness, of feeling overlooked, seemed to physically lift from his shoulders. Hope, bright and astonishing, bloomed in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced so intensely since before Emily. It felt like stepping out of a long shadow into warm sunlight. "Yes," he managed, the word barely a whisper, but imbued with universal feeling. He cleared his throat, finding a slightly stronger voice. "Yes, absolutely yes. Thank you. Thank you more than I can possibly say." A wave of relief, gratitude, and sheer disbelief washed over him, leaving him feeling shaky but profoundly alive. It wasn't just the job, the security, the daytime hours. It was the seeing, being truly seen, valued for his quiet integrity, for an act driven purely by empathy, all stemming from a little girl's tears and a lost, mended teddy bear. A new life, unfolding unexpectedly, accepted with heartfelt tears, right there in the heart of the building he had only ever served in silence. The transition from night custodian to daytime facilities coordinator happened with surprising speed, thanks to Eleanor Vance's quiet efficiency. Arthur worked his final night shift with a sense of surreal farewell, polishing the floors that had been his silent companions for 12 years. Saying goodbye to Frank, the night guard, felt oddly significant. Taking a day position, Arthur explained simply, met with a raised eyebrow and a gruff, "Good for you, Art." His first day in his new role was a blur of introductions, paperwork, and tentative navigation of the bustling daytime office environment. He traded his sturdy work boots and uniform for neatly pressed slacks, a button-down shirt, and polished dress shoes, clothes he hadn't worn regularly in years. Sitting at his own desk, equipped with computer, a phone, and neatly labeled files, felt both exhilarating and terrifying. His new colleagues in facilities management, informed by the department head, who'd received a personal call from Eleanor Vance about Arthur's exceptional reliability and attention to detail, were welcoming and patient. A woman named Maria, with a warm smile and efficient manner, took him under her wing, guiding him through the complex scheduling software and introducing him to key maintenance contractors. There were moments of doubt, of feeling like an imposter in this bright, fast-paced world. The jargon, the emails, the meetings, it was all so different from the solitary rhythm of his previous life. But the same meticulousness that made him an excellent janitor served him well here. He learned quickly, applying his innate sense of order to tracking inventory, coordinating repairs, and ensuring preventative maintenance schedules were flawlessly executed. He discovered a knack for anticipating problems, noticing a flickering light in a corridor before it was reported, flagging a potential plumbing issue based on subtle water pressure changes he observed. His quiet, observant nature became an asset. He started interacting more, sharing brief conversations by the coffee machine with Maria, troubleshooting a heating issue with Gary from HVAC, coordinating deliveries with the mailroom staff. These small daily connections began to gently erode the deep-seated loneliness he had carried for so long. He started eating lunch in the bustling staff cafeteria instead of alone in his apartment, listening to the chatter, occasionally joining in. He felt part of something. He saw Eleanor Vance periodically, a brief nod and warm smile in the elevator, a quick, settling in well, Arthur, as she passed him in the corridor. One afternoon, as he was leaving for the day, he saw her waiting near the lobby entrance with Lily. The little girl spotted him and waved enthusiastically, Barnaby tucked securely under her arm. "It's Mr. Pendleton," she exclaimed to her mother. "The one who found Barnaby." Eleanor smiled at Arthur. "She hasn't forgotten. Thank you again, Arthur. Truly." Lily shyly presented him with a folded piece of paper. Later, back in his apartment, which felt less like a refuge and more like a place to rest before another engaging day, he unfolded it. It was a crayon drawing. Barnaby, smiling broadly, standing next to a tall figure labeled Arthur Friend. Arthur smiled, his heart full, and carefully pinned the drawing to the small corkboard he'd bought for his kitchen wall. It joined a growing collection of small markers of his new life. A team photo from the department luncheon, a welcome aboard card signed by his colleagues. Arthur Pendelton, the man who once moved through the Vance Innovations Tower like a ghost, was now a visible, valued member of its intricate ecosystem. His quiet diligence, once applied to gleaming floors, was now directed towards a building's smooth operation. His journey was a quiet testament, whispered occasionally in the building's hallways, to the profound impact of seeing beyond the surface, of recognizing the dignity in quiet work and the extraordinary power of a single, unexpected act of kindness. A lost bear, mended with care, had not only brought comfort to a grieving child, but had unlocked a door to belonging for a man who had long forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen. As he walked home in the late afternoon sunlight, no longer heading towards a solitary night shift, but away from a day of connection and purpose, the city sound seemed less like noise and more like a welcoming melody. He was no longer just polishing the edges of other people's lives. He was finally, fully living his own.